and welcome to Gardening Australia. We have got everything you need this week to ignite your fires of inspiration. I can't wait to rip into it. Here's what's in store.
I'm visiting wild and beautiful Bruny Island off Tasmania's southeast coast to take a look at some of the vital work being done to try to protect some of Australia's most vulnerable bird species.
If you love cooking with bay leaves, I'll show you how to make a mini laurel that you can display in your kitchen or gift to your foodie friends.
Are you down in the dumps because the garden at your rental home is nothing more than a small, shady, rather barren, uninspiring place? Well, chin up, because I've got the garden for you.
And we meet a man with a passion for an ancient horticultural skill. In the foothills of the Great Dividing Range lies Victorian spa town Daylesford. Nestled in the shadow of the extinct volcano known as Wombat Hill is a small, densely packed nursery. Meet Lou McLaughlin, a plant-obsessed, design-focused gardener and the owner of the nursery.
My true love has always been nurseries, and because I also love sourcing good stock and then displaying it and putting it together so people walk in and go, wow.
Lou's nursery only gives us the smallest hint into her garden aesthetic because the big picture lies 20 minutes up the road in a place called Mollingham, where Lou's garden creativity has been let loose. This is the home garden of Lou and wife Deb. And it's a garden that any avid gardener could draw ideas and inspiration from. Wow. Is there a word that can sort of explain how you feel when you come to a garden and you just, there's mystery and you want to look around and it draws you in?
Couldn't stop.
Everywhere I look, there's just, here's water features and the feature plant and a bench and look, who's this?
I actually haven't named her, but one of my closest friends hand-carved her out of wood, and I just love her.
Wow. These sculptures and the birds and the bird's nest and the little bird hide there. And then another turn. And how big is it?
It's 4 acres.
Wow. Now,
We think we've probably gardened 3 acres. We're exhausted.
when did it all begin?
It started about 7 years ago, and...
This in 7 years?
Yes, yeah.
Get out.
Literally, this was an open paddock 7 years ago, so we had no mature trees to work with. So much to my wife's disappointment, I didn't plant anything. I've heard the term called a slow creep. Once you start, you literally can't stop. As you do things in your garden, one idea always leads to another. One thing we did plan, though, was the paths first and the hedges. And then the beds were all empty, and then that was fun. It was sort of like having the cake and then icing it.
Looking at this, suddenly, like the path is leading me around and these splashes of colour.
I started with that Acer Vitifolium, which I love. See the colour tones in that? You've got bronze with green. And with this burgundy here, I let these two sort of set the tone because I love playing with foliage and colour. So putting the cistus in with the orange looks great with the Acer, which the burgundy, and then pick up the burgundy over here with the leucodendrons. It's just all the colours kind of intermix, but I kind of like the garden to jump out.
And it's interesting because then you've got this strong vista, but then there's this urn and you've got the gazebo, but then over here I can see the little bird hut and there's the cow, and over there there's another path leading somewhere. There's so much that you've placed. Where do you begin to set that up?
Well, I don't really have a method as much as I will stand and look and just get a feeling for something, like a feeling that that's going to work there. I just know it will. And I love that flexibility in the garden, and it's always movement, and, you know, a garden never stays the same.
This is an expansive garden and you've got lots of space, but looking around, there's so many good plant combinations that people could use in much smaller spaces.
Yes, the irises, for instance, they work really well with the aqualegias, and I've let the aqualegias naturalise, and I love that. So this was really bare in winter, and suddenly within 1 month, bang, it all came up. But you know, I think gardening really is just planning your favourite things. I don't like working to recipes. Question myself occasionally, but I think no, go with what I like and what feels good. So when we come out of the trees into the sunnier position, this is one of my favourite plants. I've got black sambuca, which sounds like a cocktail. It's actually an elderberry, and it masses the pink flowers, and I've cut that back really hard this season. If I let this go, for instance, this could get to 3 to 4 metres, and that would crowd out that and that. So it's really important to cut things back hard. Maybe this I do every 3 years or so I get that nice step of height. I can appreciate the colours, and you need some breathing space around the plants as well.
But from these exotic combinations, my eye's drawn to waratahs here in the Victorian Highlands.
Yes, our climate is really similar to Blue Mountains. It's cold, they get frosts. They've done really well here, I think mainly because we've got such well-drained soil here. They can tolerate cold, but not necessarily wet, cold roots through winter.
Yeah.
So they've been a real surprise for us. We love them.
Walking in here, I mean, this could be someone's entire garden.
Well, Costa, we are so blessed. We've got the space where we could play with everything.
Wow, you emerge from behind the pittosporum hedge and the house space to this very different area. What was the plan here?
Well, I had to learn, Costa, gardening at such a large scale like this to work with vistas. And so we flanked the beds with the pencil pines, and then that leads your eye down the mountains there. And we have cows in the paddock next door, and then also doing borders of cotton lavender. And
from the grey blue of your lavender, you've chosen this rich lime green of the leucadendrons as that border.
Yes, and what I also like is that they flower in winter, so it gives us something else seasonally to look at through winter, because there's a lot of perennials that die down.
Hedges play an important role in defining the garden beds, as well as providing some protection from the winds. But like all things in a garden, they do take some looking after.
Got to be honest about hedging. Some days it's lovely, and some days you're halfway through it and you look ahead and you see miles more and you go, oh, especially in the heat. The finished product is well worth it. It's really, really satisfying when they're all clipped.
Now, Lou, I've got an eye for good levels, and I reckon this is perfect. But what's your secret to getting it so good?
Well, once you've got it to the required height, I actually use the bulk of the hedge itself to lean the hedge clippers on. So it takes the hedge clippers' weight, and I turn it on a slight angle, and that gives me a really sharp cut. And I go along by eye, but that'll guide me there. But I'll trim the sides, but I always go back about 3 or 4 paces every few minutes, and I just check the perspective.
After spending a day wandering around, I was keen to get Deb's perspective on the place. And what's it been like as a team piecing this together and growing such an incredible space?
It has been, that's the right word, incredible. It's been, I never in a million years would have thought that I would be sitting on 4.2 acres with a wife, 3 greyhounds and a garden like this. Never in a million years.
What does the garden mean to both of you?
Well, to me, it's a creation of what we've created together. I think it's our energies coming together, and the love that we've got for each other is expressed in the garden. Lou, being the horticulturalist and the creative person that she is, has laid it all out and chosen the plants. But it has been a combined creation in, Lou says, how do you think about this? And I'll go, yes, no, and sometimes I'll get my way and sometimes I won't.
In a garden this scale, it has at times, it's frightened me. It got bigger than I thought it ever would, and I just follow an intuitive feeling. There's no set rules with gardening. If you like a plant and you think that goes with that, well, you try it, and down the track it works. If it doesn't, that's what I love about the garden. It's not something that's ever done, that's it, dusted. It's an ongoing process for home gardens and gardens at this scale. You just never stop learning, ever.
What is a cataphyll? The term cataphyll refers to reduced leaves that don't develop into fully functioning photosynthetic leaves. They can be protective or storage apparatuses and come in many forms, such as cotyledons on young seedlings, leaf scales on corms or bulbs, bracts on flowers, or leaf buds. They can be transient or persistent. A good example is the papery sheaths on the stems of philodendrons, just like this one.
Can I get native fish to put in my pond? Well, they can be hard to find. It's not as common to find good quality native fish that are hardy for backyard ponds in local aquarium shops, but it can be done. I myself tracked down southern pygmy perch for my bathtub pond. They do a fantastic job keeping the mozzies down and keeping the water really clear. And what I would recommend is if you want some native fish is to actually contact the local Native Fish Association. They'll have volunteer members who'll be able to direct you to any aquariums that might locally stock them, or they might even help you source some yourself.
Why is melastoma referred to as blue tongue when the flowers are purple or pink? Well, there's only one species of melastoma that's native to Australia and about 70 exotic melastoma species. The local native species, Melastoma affine, has a beautiful purple or pink flower and it will form a blue fruit. And if you eat that blue fruit, your tongue will go blue, thus blue tongue. Now, it will grow on the East Coast in moist, well-drained soil, and it will be a great addition to your garden if you can get hold of one of these. But again, there's only one native species.
Now, Hannah's taken a trip to a precious part of Tasmania, where she's uncovered important conservation work with some fine feathered friends.
This is wild and wonderful Bruny Island off Tasmania's southeast coast. It's home to dramatic landscapes like this, but also it's an important refuge for some of Australia's most vulnerable bird species. All 12 of Tasmania's endemic birds can be spotted here on Bruny Island, including several endangered species whose numbers have been dwindling alarmingly. So I've come to a private nature reserve to try to catch a glimpse of some of these rare birds and learn what's being done here on the island to try to protect them. Conservationist and biologist Dr. Tonya Cochrane runs the Inala Conservation Reserve in South Bruny. So Tonya, how many birds do you have here at Inala?
There's about nearly 100 species of birds here, and they include 12 special species which are endemic to Tasmania. So they're only found in Tasmania and nowhere else in the world. And we have them all on the property.
Incredible.
And one of them is a very special bird called the 40-spotted pardalote. It's on the endangered list.
Yeah.
And Bruny Island is very special for this species because half the total known population is found just on Bruny Island.
Far out.
They're little birds and they're awfully big trees.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is get up into the canopy so that we can get a close view of them.
Closer the better.
Yeah. I think 40-spotted pardalotes have always been rare. So as we've gone along and cleared, and as climate change has affected the distribution of this species, they've been dragged along with it, and they're in quite a bit of trouble at the moment. They're around, you can hear them. Yeah. Here's one coming in now. Just have a look there. Put your binoculars on him.
They're tiny.
Yeah. They're actually one of the smallest birds in Australia.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And they're very specialist birds. It was 12 birds when I originally bought the place. And I think there's probably well over 50, 60 birds here now, which is a big colony for 40-spotted pardalotes, considering there's only about 1,500 in the whole world. They're totally reliant on this one species of eucalypt for their survival. So this is Eucalyptus viminalis, or manna gum. In Tasmania, we call it white gum. they're going round picking through the leaves, vacuuming through the leaves with that little hooked beak of theirs to get lerps, which are those sugary secretions produced by those sap-sucking insects, the psyllids. Another thing they eat is manna, which is that sugary substance that's produced by the leaves. It hardens and crystallises. It looks like little white cauliflowers. Swift parrot is another one. It's a critically endangered species, and I've been working with that. There's been a lot of clearing of their preferred species, like blue gums, over the years. So it's a bit of a race against time. So we're madly planting. We're trying to work out species that come to maturity quicker, especially with the swift parrot. That's going to be a really important thing. So we've got to get these species in the ground. We've got to get them growing and flowering so that we can continue on. So, yeah.
No time to waste.
No time to waste at all.
Tonya farmed cattle when she first came to Bruny Island in the early 1990s. She's since bought more than 600 hectares of farmland and set about planting habitat for local birds and animals. So when you first got here, how vegetated was the land?
These were all open paddocks. There was a few big viminalis here, but all of these that we see around us have been planted by me. I've been here for 36 years now, so...
Pretty much planting the whole time.
Yeah, I know, I can't help myself. One of the aims of this place is to get it back to a natural setting. So revegetation is crucial. Natural revegetation is one thing, but also to supplement that with replanting. I think conservation underpins everything that we do here. I just don't want anything to go extinct on my watch. You're right there.
I'm right. With a focus on threatened and declining woodland species, Inala grows about 500 assorted eucalypts each year. What are we looking at here?
These are little baby viminalis grown on the property from seed collected on the property. Some of them have still got their little cotyledons, and we plant them out very young so they're going to get a good root on them, and then they fire away. So these become useful to 40 spots at about 5 years of age. They use them at least for takeaways. So they'll come in and glean over the leaves. They won't be any good for nesting hollows till about 100 or more years. So it's a long-term piece of work.
Absolutely, but that's surprisingly quick in terms of providing some food for them. That's really impressive.
Right. They grow up being ukes. They grow up really quickly, get tall really quickly. We have 40 spots that are breeding here, but the young have to disperse somewhere, and so we're getting adjoining landowners to plant in their properties so that we can spread the population further. So these will go around Bruny Island in an island-wide project.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're all part of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, we are, yes. And what's going on over here, Tonya?
So these ones we're growing for the swift parrot. This is a different thing again. This one's a blue gum, and these ones are black gum, or Eucalyptus ovata and globulus. Trouble is with them, they take a long time to grow and flower. And we don't have that much time. It's predicted that within maybe the next 15 years that swift parrots might become extinct. So it's no good having a tree that might flower in 20 years. So that's where these ones come in.
So adding more diversity into your plant choices.
Yeah, and the most important thing is things that grow and flower quickly. So this is Eucalyptus ficifolia, the flowering gum from Western Australia. It flowers really quickly. And the other thing is just a beautiful plant. So this is something that people might want to grow in their backyard. Beautiful plant, and it might help a swift parrot. You never know.
And they come in dwarf varieties, so they can be quite compact.
They do. And then we've got a Eucalyptus leucoxylon, and they are already producing flowers in about 6-7 years. So we've got one in the garden here that has flowered and kept something like 12 swift parrots alive over one summer. And
black-headed honeyeaters in
black-headed
here.
honeyeaters up here.
Yeah.
Where are they? Up here
Oh, just
somewhere.
over here somewhere.
Tonya's been working with other ecologists, including Dr. Andrew Hingston, to help fast-track tree planting and increase safe nesting sites at Inala.
Yes, so this is a stand of Eucalyptus viminalis, which is providing lots of foraging habitat for 40-spotted pardalotes.
Beautiful.
But it's not providing nesting habitat because the trees are only about 35 years old. So that's where this comes in. This is a nest box for 40 spotted pardalotes. A little spot in here where they can have their nest. There's got a little baffle here to stop the wind from going through and to stop arms of possums reaching in and grabbing them. And what we've done with these this year is to reduce the hole size. So this is only 24 millimetres now. That's a tight fit for a 40 spotted pardalote. Tree martins can't get in here at all, and striated pardalotes find it really difficult. So this is helping 40 spotted pardalotes. It's helping them to retain occupancy of these boxes rather than being kicked out by these other birds.
I love the low-tech solutions. Like they're just, like, you know, anyone can do them, you know?
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. So
Love
it's
it.
all got to be very, very simple.
Yeah.
I just think it's just amazing when you plant something and an endangered species starts using it. I mean, how cool is that? It's just
the coolest.
Yeah, I know it is. I reckon it is.
What gives you hope in the world?
Oh, look, I just think the resilience of nature. I feel like I've done something, you know? Instead of lying in bed at night, worrying about the future, I've done something. And that's what I'm hoping to instill in kids of today. You know, that's the legacy I hope to leave with this property, that it's in a better state than when I first got it, that it's protected long term, and that's of use for an amazing number of species forever. I figure, look, I can't save the world, but I can have a crack at things that I'm capable of doing.
How can I use bamboo in the garden? Well, bamboo is a plant that I can't live without. It's a wonderful accent feature in the garden, and the shoots are delicious and nourishing. The leaves, well, they make a fantastic mulch, and if your compost heap gets smelly and wet, you can put loads of bamboo leaves in there and it'll sweeten the mix. Bamboo leaves are rich in silicon, and so if you put that into the soil, then the plants that derive the silicon from it grow stronger and tougher cells. It's an all-round winner. And there's one other thing that I really like to do. If you've got a plant that needs to be sun-hardened, you can create a shade canopy by using these cut leaves. The leaves drop off bit by bit over a period of days, and that slowly increases the amount of sun reaching the plant underneath. It sun hardens them naturally, and at the end, you've got bamboo canes which you can use. And that's another vital use. I use bamboo canes for supports for my most vigorous vines.
Oh, there's nothing like using herbs from your garden when cooking at home. It lifts whatever food you prepare. Tammy's got a clever way of making sure that one of her favourite herbs is always on hand.
Mediterranean bay trees, like this one, are pretty tough plants. They're suitable as screens, topiary, or just happy in a pot. Bay leaves are an essential herb in the kitchen. They bring a subtle depth of flavour to soups, curries, roasts and sauces. If you've got a bay tree, then you'll know they have endless leaves. And today I'm going to use some to show you how to make a simple mini laurel that you can display in the kitchen or gift to your foodie friends. Here's what you need to make it. Craft wire, needle nose pliers, a bunch of bay leaves, jute string, and some kind of circular vessel like a jar. I'm using a glass jar, but you can use anything that's circular, and that's just to help give the wire its shape. So wrap it around, and then cut that off. And then just use your pliers to make a little, or bend at one end so the leaves don't slide off. And then you can start threading. And I'd say aim to thread at the same spot for each leaf. It's going to be slightly different because some leaves are big, some are small. Now, you don't need to thread them on one by one. We'd be here all day. You can take a bunch and carefully thread it through. Just take care not to poke yourself. If you haven't heard the word laurel before, it's a type of circular wreath made out of leaves and branches. In ancient Greece, they used to wear it on their heads, and it was a symbol of victory. You may have heard the saying, resting on one's laurels. Well, this is where it came from. Once you're at the end, then you can use your pliers to create a loop on one end and then use the other end to hook around it. And then finish it off with a length of jute. That's looking great. Now all you need to do is pop it in a warm place and the leaves will dry in about a week. It'll look gorgeous in the kitchen. And hey, it will be handy whenever you need a leaf for cooking.
Of all the seasonal flowers in a winter garden, the humble helleborus are some of the most generous. They're the ideal plants to grow under deciduous trees where they make the most of seasonal winter light and rainfall. As Mediterranean survivors, they know how to hang in there through the hottest and driest months. The spectacular display of winter flowers lasts for months, the spent blooms holding as much interest as the fresh, and they make long-lasting cut flowers. The green-flowered Helleborus argutifolius is a great plant, with dark green foliage with deeply toothed edges and bright green sprays of flowers. Green is a great colour for unifying plantings in the garden because green goes with everything. Greys, burgundies, blues and other greens, they all work well. One of the other great green species with a stinking reputation is Helleborus foetidus, the species name literally meaning fetid. While the crushed foliage stinks, the plant does not. It's got a lovely, tall and elegant form. The most common and adaptable species is named orientalis, but they come from Greece and Turkey to the Caucasus, which gives you a clue as to how tough they are. After the flowers finish in late spring, the plants produce a fresh flush of foliage, which persists throughout the warmer weather. By late summer though, it's looking a bit tatty and it's best removed to make way for the new flowers. You can either do it by hand with a pair of secateurs, or if you get your timing right, you can even use a whippersnipper to cut it down almost to the ground. Over time, happy hellebores will self-seed gently, producing seedlings with different colours and markings on the flowers. If you get a particularly good seedling with characteristics that you like, mark it when it's in bloom. Then when it finishes flowering, in late spring or in autumn, you can dig it up and divide it and get more plants. A sea of nearly any plant is a joy, but a sea of hellebores, heaven.
Still to come on Gardening Australia. Hannah's finding out how the next generation of Bruny Islanders are protecting their environment to help save an endangered bird. Millie gets a bit frosty. And we meet a man with a passion for an ancient horticultural skill. The power of a garden to transform a space, any space, can't be overstated. Even a single potted plant can change the whole vibe. Jane's next story is with a landscape architect who's using plants to completely change the outlook of a challenging rental garden.
Today, I'm taking you on a trip 18 kilometres northeast of Melbourne to the leafy suburb of Briar Hill. To reach our destination, we need to head up the driveway, past the other units, and up to this front door.
Meet landscape architect and playground designer Elliot Summers, his partner in crime Alex, and their children Oliver 17, Millie 14 and Henry 11. The family moved into this 4-bedroom unit 8 years ago with no idea how long they were staying. And for a growing family of 5, that's a tight fit. And for a plant lover like Elliot, the lack of space provided limited opportunities. But Where there's a will. It's fairly compact, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not huge. Not a lot of room. Got to kind of make it work as best we can.
And there was literally nothing here when you first came.
Basically, yeah. So there was decking and gravel, mulch, the existing trees, and a few lomandra sort of scattered about the place. So we swap this area every 6 months just to deal with the changing sun. Yeah, so
because that's a real problem, isn't it?
It's huge, yeah, because we're south-facing, nothing's going to last the whole year round in here because it's going to get cooked in the summer or nothing in the winter. So every 6 months, all the shade stuff comes out from under the trees and goes up against the wall.
Yep.
And all the sun-loving stuff gets shoved away on the western wall, out of the way for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then in 6 months' time, it's a surprise when it all comes back.
As long as you don't mind lifting and lumping, that's all right.
Well, it's only twice a year.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, every year we try something different on the wall as well.
It's a real Melbourne wintry old day, raining cats and dogs, but that's nice looking out there.
Well, because we've got this fantastic frame here with these great big windows and the same coming out of the master bedroom as well, so you're looking straight out onto this garden space here and then onto this wall as well. No matter where you're standing, there's always this impact of the garden coming back at you.
Now, you're renting. How different does that make, from your point of view, does it make building a garden?
Well, renting, you have a permanent sense of impermanence. You keep waiting for that point where you're going to have to move again. So you keep everything in pots. And you really don't want to invest heavily in sort of, the whole garden area because all you're really doing is just putting money into somebody else's investment. Because they're all in pots and whatever, and I really wanted to have the effect of looking out on an actual garden rather than just a collection of pots. Pots are expensive. Nice pots, that is. So most of the stuff that's in the garden around the pond, they're all in just either black pots or they're epiphytes, so they don't require pots, which is where the bromeliads are fantastic because anywhere in between, you just stuff them into the gaps and they'll just happily sit there. And one of them is flowering beautifully at the moment. Lovely little red things with purple centres, gorgeous.
So what do you do with your work?
Well, the bulk of our work is mostly play spaces, so some public play spaces, some schools. With designing play spaces, it's really important that you have so much more than just play equipment. You've got to have plants in there as much as you can. And yes, kids are going to throttle them. Of course they're going to do. It's what kids do. That's why you stuff it full of plants, because then some of them will make it. And then so they associate these spaces of play and fun and joy with these plants being there. If you have just a big enough garden area and the right kind of plants so that in a few years' time, and they're large enough, the kids are going to get underneath them. And the kids are going to make their own spaces underneath them and start moving through and making tunnels and all those sorts of things. It becomes more about using their imagination and being in that space, but you've got to provide the opportunity for that to happen organically. The research points to the fact that this is what kids need. My kids, for example, haven't shown a particular interest in gardening or, getting into plants and all that kind of thing. But I feel that by having them grow up with this being around them, they're going to have an expectation of this is what, I want from open space. This is what I want from my outside. So when they move on and find their own places, they'll notice the absence if it's not there and then do something about it.
Oh, thank you very much. I need that. That's lovely. So as you can see, having a rental place with a very small garden should be no barrier at all to having a lush garden that the whole family can enjoy, even when they're on their phones.
Let's head back to stunning Bruny Island, where Hannah's learning how students at Australia's southernmost school are helping to save an endangered bird.
Earlier in the show, I met two ecologists who are working to protect endangered Tasmanian birds with their revegetation work here on Bruny Island. Education is the key. I'm visiting the southernmost school in Australia to hear from a group of Bruny Island youngsters on the importance of protecting our precious environment to help save an endangered bird. It's a busy morning at the Bruny Island District School.
We've got a very special day today, so we're going to spend some time in the classroom and then we're going to go down to Pardalote Patch, but we've got a very special guest who's joining us today, and it's Hannah from Gardening Australia. Can you say good morning to Hannah?
Good morning,
Hello! I'm so excited for spending time with you and to see your beautiful Pardalote Patch I've been hearing so much about. This group of Grade 1 students is proud to show me their classroom, where they're learning about bird conservation with teacher Claire Boost.
Oh, so Hannah, we usually start the day with a little song, and we wondered if you might like to join us in our circle.
I would love to.
Great, excellent. Okay, stand up everybody. Care for country, care for country, caretakers of this land.
These kids are part of the tight-knit Bruny Island community, which has a permanent population of only about 1,000 people.
Together we stand, hand in hand. Now, the book is called Little Spot on Bruny Island. A little bird with lots of spots lives in the trees on Bruny Island. His name is Little Spot. On Bruny Island, we're really fortunate because the children here are already very connected to nature just because of where they live and the lifestyle that they already have. So they already know a lot. They spend a lot of time in the bush. Now, we have learnt so much about the 40-spotted pardalote. Can you put your hand up if you can remember a fact about the 40-spotted pardalote?
That 40-spotted pardalotes have a hooked beak.
And why do they have a hooked beak, Hoolie?
So they can get in the manna.
So they can scratch away at the bark, can't they? And then they can get at the manna, which is the main thing that they eat. Yeah. So what's happened to the white gums on Bruny Island and actually all over Tasmania? Alba?
They're getting cut down.
They have been cut down, so there aren't as many as there used to be, are there?
We need to plant some more.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to our tables. Your books, you have to find your book on your table. The other great thing about getting the young kids involved in conservation is that then they take it on and teach their parents, you know. If their kids say to them, don't cut down that tree or don't drive on that bit of the beach, they're going to listen to their kids, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's great that education just filters into the community and hopefully it keeps growing.
It's time to go to Pardalote Patch, which has turned into an outdoor classroom for all sorts of subjects.
Yeah, pop your hat on.
Is it working?
It's working. Oh, big muscles, ready, 1, 2, 3, lift. Oh, nice. Now remember, we all stay together, don't run off ahead. So, we need to water our trees, don't we? And these trees are only young, so we need to give them a little helping hand. So we've brought our watering cans down to do our watering today. How does that sound?
Great.
Good.
Oh, we found something.
We've got our science lessons when we get out the magnifying glasses and we can go and look up close to things and investigate things. We've been able to do some maths where we measure the trees and then we can come back in a month and see how much they've grown. They love to bring their books down here and do their reading down here and, of course, drawing. So they're learning about all different birds and we can look at the life cycles of birds and all that science as well.
It's beautifully integrated, brings so many different threads of education in
Absolutely.
in a really holistic way.
Yeah, and a meaningful way
Meaningful
for them
way,
too. Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be outside. So these trees were planted about 12 years ago by Bruny Island school students, and they're a mixture of eucalyptus species, so the idea was to increase the habitat for our native critters. And it was a natural progression to then come and plant some Eucalyptus viminalis when the children learnt about the plight of the 40-spotted pardalote.
What a gorgeous legacy to add to, but also to continue for potentially more people to come and more students to plant trees.
Absolutely, and I think because the children have learnt that these trees have got a long way to go. It might take 100 years before they develop hollows for the critters to nest in. So they can watch them grow as they grow. So it's pretty exciting.
I think it's also fantastic to introduce the concept of long-term thinking, multi-generational thinking, because a lot of us won't be here to see these trees mature, but it's still worthwhile doing.
Absolutely.
The school's Pardalote program is supported by the Inala Conservation Reserve, which has helped the students to plant more manna gums here. Dr. Tonya Cochrane is thrilled younger generations are learning about Bruny Island's threatened species and how to help protect them.
I figure I won't be around forever, so the kids are our future. It's really important to pass on that knowledge and to set things up for the long term.
How big do you think this tree's going to grow?
Maybe taller than that.
Do you think it's going to be as big as me?
Bigger than you.
Bigger than me. Bigger than these trees, maybe. So exciting.
The little kids are so full of wonder and awe still. They don't take on the heavy side of things yet, which I'm really glad.
Yeah.
So they are more excited about being able to act and do something, which they're really positive all the time. We can plant trees and we can look after the 40-spotted pardalotes and other species too.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. We can be so aware of the problems and dwell on them a lot. And I think it's important to be aware of those problems, but dwell on the solutions.
Absolutely.
And throw our energy in that department.
And that's what children are so good at that, aren't they? They're not jaded until much later.
Aww.
So it's really great. I love working with the little ones because they're so much fun as well.
Do I need to fear frost? Well, the truth is it is a really unforgiving element in the garden, particularly if you're not prepared. When I first moved to a really cold climate, I lost about 30 or 40% of my really reliable plants. They just couldn't cope. But there are great species that will. They're adapted to it, both in the ornamental garden and also in the veggie patch. In fact, some vegetables, carrots included, are made sweeter by that cold weather. They produce an antifreeze in their cells to stop them freezing solid, which is a type of sugar, and that actually makes them sweeter. There's a range of veggies like that. The frost can also be really useful in cleaning up overwintering pests. So a lot of gardeners in warmer climates really would like the occasional frost. And it can also help to break up heavy soil. But the most important thing to know about gardening in the frost is to be prepared. On a sunny, clear day, you're much more likely to end up with a cold, frosty night. So cover things up, move them into a sheltered area, and you can have your frost and enjoy the results too.
Why does the water from my sprinklers turn all the surfaces it touches a reddy brown? Well, if you travel around Perth, you'll often notice that on fences and pathways you'll see a reddy brown stain. Now that's because a number of areas around Perth contain large amounts of iron in the groundwater. And when this is pulled to the surface via a garden bore and the dissolved iron mixes with oxygen, it oxidises and becomes that rusty colour, and hence ending up all over the surfaces around it where the sprinklers fall. So there are some products you can buy to remove these stains, and you can also get specialist filtration systems to remove the iron from the water, but they are expensive.
Whether it's a whole garden or a single plant over a lifetime, one of the best things about gardening is the chance to shape things over time. Our next story is with a gardener who's worked with his collection for decades, and all is not what it first seems.
When I was younger, I loved climbing trees. To climb up that tree and see all those branches and sit up there and watch the birds and everything, it was so much enjoyment. We'd make a little like cubby. So it became part of the whole concept of what a tree is to me. A Japanese master told me, you've got to look up in the tree, and if you feel that you would love to climb it, like a little boy you want to climb it, then you're actually winning. Because the whole thing of bonsai is it's got to look like it's not touched by man. If it doesn't look natural, you lost the plot. I get up at 6 o'clock. I'll open the door and I'll come out and there's just birds singing, and it's a real nice feeling to come out. There's a little stream that comes down that side and there's a stream that comes down this side, so I'm actually like on a little island all to myself. My name is James Miller. I've been doing bonsai for 50 years. I'm a horticulturist and an operations manager. I've been retired now for about 10 years. My grandchildren and my bonsais are my life at the moment. I don't have anything else to worry about. So I wake up and do bonsais and go to sleep and dream of them. This is a rare forest fig. I call him the old man. He's one of my favourites, I must admit. This came from South Africa with me. When I was working on a race course, this little fellow was growing under the eaves of one of our houses for our staff, but it was right up into the eaves and was actually pushing the tiles of the roof up. This part went up like 9 feet, so we had to take it out. So I made a bonsai out of it. You want to save trees that are dug out and you don't want them to go to the dump. And some of them, straight away, you will see it's got character that you can use into a bonsai. I always say I've got a League of Nations with my bonsai because wherever I worked, I brought trees home from those areas, so they're all here. So there's Australian, South African, Fijian, Hawaiian. It's like a photograph album for me. I can remember where I got them all. I was born in South Africa. My parents from Scotland. We moved down to the coast. I started working as a lifeguard in holiday seasons because you could make a little bit of pocket money. I started doing the gardens on the beaches, and then I trained as a horticulturist because I realised that I had the eye for it, but as far as plants and things, I had no idea what I was doing. When we first started bonsaiing, we would try and grow all these fancy things they had in Japan and that, you know, like maples, and they just were so hard to keep alive in our climate. So I've sort of specialised in figs. I've got about 20 varieties here. These are figs, and even these little guys are figs. This is the willow leaf fig. It was my very first bonsai in Australia. I found it in a nursery, a little cutting, and I was so excited. I took it and I was going around Australia in a camper van. So it actually came with me for 2 years in the camper van, and so he's been around Australia the whole way, from Cooktown to Broome. So he's seen everything. And all the ones that you'll see in my collection that I've grown from cuttings comes from this original one. When I immigrated, I knew that I'd had to find a place with that same climate for my trees that I was going to bring across, and I came to the Sunshine Coast. So it was almost like finding home again. It's the same climate. I thought, well, this is it, you know, and my daughter was happy here too, so we just made it our home. This is from South Africa. It's very special to me. It's one of my first. It's a bronze paper bark. It's nothing to do with the Australian paper bark. Totally different species. This is in its 60, 70-year-old now. So that's why it's so special. You know, when you come from another country and you want to bring trees, you hear these stories that everything dies in quarantine. But I've brought in 3 sets of trees through the quarantine system, and I've never lost one. In my collection, there's no purchased bonsais. Yamaguchi means collecting from the nature, and that's the way it was started. The Chinese would go up into the mountains and see this old tree with what they call qi, so it's got power and a vigorous life in it. And they would bring them home, and they would get one of their wife's beautiful pots and drill a hole in it and put it into their courtyard, and that's how bonsai started, basically. So that's the ultimate, really, and that's what I like to do. I've bought species, like little cuttings of unusual plants, but I just don't want to buy someone else's bonsai because bonsai is art and horticulture. That's what gives me the pleasure of doing them. When I'm working my trees, I just disappear into them, and the birds and the water and everything just makes you feel really relaxed, and you keep on looking at it and turning it around and seeing which is the best shape. And when I'm alone with my bonsai, sometimes I even look back and say, gee, how did I create that? Right, this is a fig from Hawaii. This particular one was growing through into the roof of a house, so we had to remove it. I had no idea of making it into a bonsai at that stage. It's the biggest I've got. We've got that idea that bonsai is small, but bonsai actually means tree in a tray, so they can be any size, 8 foot even. This is a Scheffalera. There's two varieties. One is indigenous to Australia, but it's got a huge leaf, so it doesn't make a bonsai. This is the small leaf one. In Hawaii, they call it the octopus plant. So if I just take a branch off, you can see that it looks like a bit of an octopus. And also they call it an umbrella tree. Umbrella. You can actually see my grandkids are involved here. My granddaughter's little contribution. I've got 3 grandchildren, and I've been involved with the grandkids from day one. This area here is my grandkids' little bonsai area. This one and this one belongs to the 9-year-old, and this is a 6-year-old. My granddaughter actually works on my trees. It's good for my heart, you know, to have the grandkids loving that, what I've really loved. I mean, I've done it now for over 45 years, so it's a big part of my life, and it's part of their life now too. I do have local trees, and most of them are bougainvilleas. People plant them as hedges or in the garden, and they take over, so people get rid of them. So when you can get stock that's locally, like these guys, they don't even know they've been moved. They just keep growing. And that's a nice thing about bougainvilleas too, very hardy. This here, we call this a sacrifice branch, which is really just to thicken the lower part. And if I take this whole piece off, which you can become cuttings if you really want to. So when you cut that off, then all this energy that's coming through here is automatically going to go into this one and start pushing it out. So you'll do this again and again and again until it's nice and thick. So you can imagine, like, in a few years' time, it'll be just covered in flowers. It's so important. Well, like every one of them, I can give you a story. In my mind, I can actually see where it was. This is a Natal fig. I collected this in a park on the coast in South Africa where I used to live, and they grow everywhere there. So when I look at this, I can remember that park I used to play in as a youngster, and it's really been a lovely treat to look after. One of the reasons I like to collect bonsais, and that is that you can pass them on in China and Japan, that there's like 5 generations have looked after a bonsai. I really would love, obviously, for my grandkids to grow these figs, because I believe they're going to be like 800 years old, I reckon they can grow. I think they're going to last a long, long time.
I know that story has got you itching to pick up your secateurs, and I'm reading you loud and clear. So here's your list of jobs for the weekend. In cool climates, it's the perfect time to plant bare-rooted fruit trees and roses while the plants are dormant. Sow snow peas now for a sweet spring harvest in about 6 to 8 weeks' time. Why not try a Tomasia, a high-performing native shrub that goes well in a cottage garden and will even grow under gum trees. In warm temperate areas, it's a good time to plant rhubarb or lift, divide and share your own clumps. Take hardwood cuttings of deciduous plants such as mulberries, roses and grapes. Simply snip off a 15-centimetre long cutting a bit thicker than a pencil and stick it in a pot or in the ground. Take some time and get out in the bush to see the wildflowers for an idea of how to plant cool season colour in your garden. In the subtropics, build a teepee and plant some climbing beans. Wellington Wonder is a variety that can take the heat. Winter flowering camellias are in bloom. Cultivars of Camellia japonica like a shady spot, while Camellia sasanqua will take more sun. Stop feeding roses to encourage a winter slowdown, so they're ready for pruning in late July. Tropical gardeners have so many choices for veggies to grow now. Make the most of the many options. Try anything from artichokes to zucchini. Consider a hedge of heliconia or crab's claw. Different varieties can grow from 1 to 4 metres tall, and their stunning pendulous flower would brighten any garden. Kapok, Cochlospermum fraseri, are flowering, which is a sign that freshwater crocodiles are laying their eggs. In arid zones, plant a vine now to provide shade when the hot season hits. A grapevine will also offer some summer fruit. Aloes are awesome for winter colour, but avoid the candelabra aloe, Aloe arborescens, which can be a weed in warmer areas. Try growing a turkey bush, also known as Calatrix exstipulata or munbarda. This small shrub has papery pink flowers from May to August and has many traditional uses. Have fun out there this weekend, gardeners, and don't forget, you can always catch up on Miss GA episodes on iView anytime. Well, that's a wrap, folks, but before we go, I have a little bit of a favour to ask. Gardening Australia is humbled to have been nominated for a Logie Award, and we would really love your vote. Let's show the whole country how important gardening is. Our website has all the details. We can't do it without your help. Now, I also want to let you know that we'll be taking our winter break from next Friday, but there's lots of fantastic garden content for you while we're busy restocking the Gardening Australia shelves. Join Alan Titchmarsh and the crew for a brand new series of Love Your Garden while we're away.
I've always believed that when life is full of uncertainty, the perfect place to escape to is a garden. No matter the size, these precious patches of green have the power to heal and restore.
Which is why, for me, our gardens are more important than ever.
And you don't have to miss us too much. You can watch episodes you missed on ABC iView, visit our information-packed website where you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, join in our socials via Facebook and Instagram, and check out our YouTube channel. So dive in and it'll be like we were never away. We'll be back in the spring. So until then, happy gardening.